The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is touted to be not only the greatest Zelda game of all time, but in fact the greatest game of all time, partially as seen by Metacritic reviews. The game came out in 1998 on the N64 and was the first 3D Zelda game to ever be released, with a remaster coming out on the 3DS in 2011. But is it really the best game ever made? Hey, welcome back to my corner. Now, it has been a very long time since I've done a video like this, since 2023. Wow, that was a long time, but you know, I'm doing, why not? So recently, well, not recently, but a few months ago, I finally completed Ocarina of Time, which was fun. Like, it depends on what portion we're talking about. And so I thought, just because I have the footage to do this kind of thing already, why not make a video about it? So here we go. But first, that's better. After naming this profile, we officially start the story by staring at a 10-year-old boy while he's sleeping. That's not weird and questionable at all. Apparently, every Kukuri has their own little fairy best friend, and this little boy doesn't. Hey, that reminds me of me throughout K through 3. Then we see a little snapshot of what's going to happen in the future, and after that, the Great Deku Tree summons Navi. The Great Deku Tree tells Navi that evil is on the rise, and he also tells her that Nintendo took pity on the boy without any fairy friends. So it's time for him to go on a quest. This is Link, the boy without a fairy friend. And how does Navi choose to wake up Link? Did someone say child abuse? Navi successfully wakes up Link and tells him that he's been summoned by the Great Deku Tree. So they both head over to see him. On the way to the Great Deku Tree, one of three things happens. 1, Saria congratulates me for actually getting a fairy friend. Yay. 2, a lot of people purely want to tell me how the controls work and nothing else. And 3, this guy. This is Mido, who weirdly looks like Hermie the elf. Hermie's lookalike is guarding the Great Deku Tree and demands that A, I have a sword, and B, I have a shield in order to get past him. Fine, I'll do it. So now that I have a sword and shield, Mido finally lets me through. And then I collected Deku Sticks for a bit. Once I made it to the Great Deku Tree, the Great Deku Tree told me that he's been cursed. And no, not cursed like the NYLT songbook. Baby shark doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, mama shark doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, daddy shark, grandpa shark, swimmer dude. Wait, swimmer dude? Swam away, swam to... Lost a leg... Happy shark, call 911 is to... What the fuck? Cursed as in there's a parasite in him. So he tasks me, a 10-year-old child, to kill this parasite. Well, I mean, it's not like I have anything better to do, really. You know, like living life. Who wants to do that when I can kill a parasite and potentially die? So the Deku Tree opens his mouth for me to go inside, and this is definitely appropriate for kids. So I go all the way to the top of his throat, I think? Is this his throat? To grab the slingshot. With slingshot in hand, I jump down into the Great Deku Tree's guts? Stop. I don't even want to think about where this is. And then all the way to wherever the hell this is, where this parasite is. This is Goma, the parasite inside the Great Deku Tree, and now the subject of my nightmares. Fortunately, Goma's an easy kill, and once I kill Goma, I eat its heart or consume it. Point being, I have an extra heart of health now. And the Great Deku Tree has been ridded of a parasite. Wow. As a reward, the Great Deku Tree tells us the story of Genesis. Oh, wait, no, wrong Genesis. That Ganondorf is evil, the Triforce exists, and it was made by 3 Hylian goddess who created the Earth. The Great Deku Tree then tells us not to let Ganondorf lay his hands on the Triforce, because it could lead to very bad things. Apparently, despite my best efforts of going down the throat of the Great Deku Tree, this curse was fatal and he was gonna die whether or not I helped him. Which, what was the point of that exactly? So in his final moments, he gives me the Kokiri Emerald and tells me to go see the princess at Hyrule Castle. Then he utters his final words and he dies on screen. Mido then accuses me of killing the Deku Tree because when I went in, he was alive, and then when I left, he died. Aside from the fact that it's not true, that's a fairly reasonable assumption, actually. So off I go to Hyrule Castle to meet with Princess Zelda. But before I leave, Saria actually stops me to give her ocarina. Somehow she knew that I would leave one day and that I was different from the rest of them. And she hopes we'll be friends forever, which, I mean, fine by me. Welcome to the club, I guess. It's not like I have many to begin with. Welcome to Hyrule Field, which is so incredibly empty for what it's been hyped up to be. Honestly, there's almost zero reason to even explore this place. It's here where Link meets this extremely annoying owl, and for whatever damn reason, Nintendo felt the need that when the owl asks if you want to hear his whole spiel all over again, that the cursor should be default on yes. So that way when you're spamming A to go through this text faster, you gotta be careful so that you don't press the yes, so that you don't end up in an infinite loop of text. Great game design. Once the owl's gone, I continue my long and very boring trek to Hyrule Castle. Oh, did I tell you that you can't even enter Hyrule Castle if it's nighttime? I mean, logically, that kind of makes sense, but can't the day and night cycle just be paused for a little bit of time until you first go into Hyrule Castle? That would have been nice. Finally, in Hyrule Castletown, Link meets a girl that is possibly his future wife. That's a real theory that actually exists. She tells Link that her father is still at the castle, and that he's been there for a long time. So Link evades these blind guards that have zero peripheral vision to find that Mario's lookalike is asleep on the job.
I'm tired.
Which honestly makes sense. So I leave the castle and find Marin just outside Castletown, where she gives me a weird egg to wake up her father. So I go and do that. With him out of the way, I can now push these crates into position so that I can get into the castle. After I evade these extremely blind guards, I make my way into the castle courtyard, where, if you didn't know, if you shoot one of the windows, you can actually get a guard to notice you and he'll throw a bomb at you. Oh, and the other window has paintings of Mario from Super Mario 64 and Bowser's decapitated head. Because reasons. So I talked to Zelda, and Zelda's busy asking me how I made it past these guards so slow, considering how blind they are, who I am, why I'm in a gay gnome outfit. That's a reference from Wind Waker rewritten. Oh my god. Why are you shouting? You're going to scare the gnome into fight or flight. Oh man, we're going to actually die. Which is a Rumble exclusive, so I highly recommend you check it out there. And if you're watching on Rumble, I love you. Zelda realizes that I'm the boy from her dream, actually. So she fills me in on what her dream was exactly. The prophecy was that there was a lot of darkness, and a boy in green came from the forest with a fairy to get rid of the darkness. And this boy happened to have the Kukiri Emerald. This is like when a girl describes her ideal man, and it describes you exactly. But instead of finding the love of your life, you find another task to do that will potentially get you killed. Princess Zelda then reads the first few verses of the Book of John. Oh, wait, wrong story. That when the Hylian goddesses created the world and the Triforce was created, apparently the Triforce can magically grant anyone's wish ever. So the ancient sages locked it in the Temple of Time to prevent it from being abused. And if it happens to be abused, it will split into 3 different parts, and 2 pieces will go to other people, but the one piece that corresponds with you the most will stay with you. She tasks me to get the other 2 spiritual stones and open the Door of Time in order to access the Sacred Realm. She lets me look through the window at the evil man known as Ganondorf, and Zelda suspects him of not being loyal. Good guess with the evil eyes. Zelda then writes me a letter of authority to let me through the gate at Kakariko Village, up Death Mountain, and she tells me Impa will help me out of the castle. Impa teaches me the royal song, Zelda's Lullaby, and I'm on my way to Kakariko Village. I show the guy at the gate the letter, and he thinks this whole thing's a joke, but he opens the gate anyway, and he recommends I buy a proper shield that is actually made of metal, and if he goes to a certain guy, I can get a discount. So I went and did that. It may have only been 5 rupees off, but apparently it can range from anywhere between 5 to 40 rupees off, and I've actually gotten it to be 40 rupees off, just so you know. Then I did a little bit of the Happy Mask side quest, and off I went up to Death Mountain. I come across a Goron that's complaining about Dodongo's Cavern being blocked up by a boulder because Dodongo's Cavern is where they get their food. So basically they're all really hungry and they eat rocks. Here's what 16-year-old me said.
Why don't you just eat the boulder? You eat rocks, why not eat that?
I don't know why I never talked the way I actually do back then, but I mean, I didn't. I also don't know why I sounded like I had a lisp, because I didn't. Once I make it to Goron City, I find that I can open the door with Zelda's Lullaby, but I can't get Darunia to dance because it involves a song that I don't have, called Saria's Song. And there is a way to the Lost Woods through Goron City, and thankfully there's a torch in Darunia City, so this is actually possible. Otherwise, I'd have to do a hell of a lot of backtracking. Oh, by the way, Darunia is saying he's angry, he's dealing with so many problems with Goron City at the moment because of the boulder, and that he doesn't want to talk to me. Oh, how that will change as the game progresses. So I make my way through the Lost Woods and eventually find Saria, who teaches me her song. And then I go back to Goron City to play it for Darunia, which puts him in a very good mood. Once Darunia finishes dancing, I ask him for the spiritual stone he has, also known as the Goron Ruby, and he tells me that if I clear the boulder in front of Dodongo's Cavern, and I kill the Dodongo inside, he will give me the stone. As a prerequisite, he gave me the Goron bracelet so I could actually lift bombs. So I go ahead and blow up the boulder, which, can't Gorons lift bomb flowers? I mean, surely they're strong enough to do so, so are they just stupid that they never thought to blow the boulder up? Huh? So inside I go to kill the Dodongo. In case you were wondering, this is King Dodongo, the resident of Dodongo's Cavern. Now, simply because of its size, you would think that it's actually somewhat hard to kill him, but it very much isn't, let's be honest. Basically, what you have to do is you have to throw a bomb into his mouth while he's inhaling, have him swallow it, the bomb blows up inside of him, and then you wail on him with your sword. Do this until he kills himself. Oh yeah, by the way, Link gets to consume another heart. Once Link exits the cave, Darunia congratulates him by giving him head trauma. You know the theories that Link is dead throughout the entirety of Majora's Mask, which are very likely not true, but whatever. I'd like to propose that Link was dead throughout the vast majority of Ocarina of Time because there is no way Link survived getting his skull pounded in by a Goron. Link and Darunia become sworn brothers, and he gives me the spiritual stone. So off I go to escape from the Goron hugs of death to find the next spiritual stone. Oh, but first, I gotta find the Great Fairy Fountain. So at the top of Death Mountain, there's a bombable wall, and if you break this bombable wall, you'll expose a crevice that you can actually walk into. This is where the Great Fairy Fountain is in Death Mountain. All you have to do is play Zelda's Lullaby, and she gives you a nice perk. Not only do you get to see this, you also get a magic meter. Now, to get back down to Kakariko, you can either A, walk, or B, you can let the owl take you for a ride. So now that we're done with that, let's find the spiritual stone of water. Sorry, first I've got to do a few side quests. Such as finding the Sun Song, finding pieces of heart, finding gold sculptulas, finding Din's Fire, and the Happy Mask quest. Oh, don't forget about finding Epona. That's going to be extremely important later. Going up the Zora River, I eventually make it to Zora's domain. Here we meet the Zora King, who's about as big as a fat pride activist. He is worried because his daughter is missing. Off to the left, you can actually play a little diving minigame. Don't think this is a side quest, though. This is 100% mandatory. You need it because successfully completing it will give you the silver scale. What does it do? It allows you to dive farther down. Why would you need to do this? Because there's an opening to Lake Hylia here that you otherwise can't reach. And in Lake Hylia, there's a bottled letter from Ruto, King Zora's daughter. How it got there specifically? I have no idea. I deliver the letter back to the Zora King, and he reads it aloud. Apparently what it says is, Ruto is fine, she's just in Jabu Jabu's belly. The hell is a Jabu Jabu? So her father asked me to go and look for her. Please let me go. Let me go. Thank you. So to answer your question, this is a Jabu Jabu. All I have to do is feed it a fish. Hang on a second, let me go get one. I'm back with the fish. All I have to do is drop it right in front of it and it'll eat it. Why the hell does Nintendo have this weird thing of having Link go into things' throats? After I traverse this thing's guts for a little bit, I found Ruto. She refuses to leave and then she falls down a hole. Part of the reason why she can't leave is because her precious stone, the spiritual stone, is missing and she's here to look for it. So if I'm gonna insist on being here, I have the quote honor of carrying her around literally everywhere. Oh, and I forgot to mention, apparently Jabu Jabu's sick. That would explain all the electric tentacle stuff. It takes a while, but we both eventually find the sacred stone. So once Princess Ruto retrieves the spiritual stone, she gets sucked up by Lord Jabu Jabu's body. Please don't ask me if I know how this works. And what comes down in her place is a giant octopus thing. No, she wasn't eaten. And this octopus thing is so fucking annoying because you need to hit it in the back with a boomerang and it moves faster than you do, and if you get too close to it, it'll change directions. And on top of that, very often it can be out of range for the boomerang. So this takes forever. So once I do make it out of that hellish nightmare, I find the boss fight of this dungeon thing. This cancerous looking boss is called Baronade, and it's actually a pretty fun fight. What you have to do is cut those little tentacle things and then it'll expose its body. Do that enough times and it dies. I get to consume another heart, and Princess Ruto is complaining about me being late as if I was in a time limit. But when we warp out of Jabu Jabu's belly, we're standing at a very familiar distance. So she asked me what I want as a reward for saving her, and I tell her that I want the spiritual stone. Ruto says her mother told her to only give this spiritual stone to someone she wants to be her husband. So she sees it as an engagement ring. Isn't Ruto also 10? So why is Nintendo trying to push two 10-year-olds to get married? Although, let's be honest, Link doesn't exactly know what's going on, and he's kinda weirded out about it. So yeah, I have all 3 spiritual stones now. Don't tell my father. What the hell is going on here? Oh, by the way, there happens to be a great fairy there, so I get Pharaoh's Wind. When I get back to Hyrule Castle, it's extremely dark and it's raining and it's storming. And Impa and Princess Zelda are both on a white horse racing out of the castle. Princess Zelda chucks the Ocarina of Time into the moat. Then Ganondorf, of all people, asks me where they went. I don't tell him, and he compliments me for having guts. I draw my sword, and again he appreciates that I have guts. Then he electrocutes me. And off he goes. So before I went to get the Ocarina of Time, I went to the back alley. Why? Because after this cutscene, there will be a soldier lying there, and he has a very important message. He tells me that Ganondorf betrayed the king, Impa and Princess Zelda narrowly escaped, Zelda was waiting to give me the Ocarina of Time, and that once I get it, head to the Temple of Time. Then he dies. After that, I went through the completely unaffected Hyrule Castle town. This hints at cut content, but whatever. Then I go to get the Ocarina, and it somehow gives me a flashback where Zelda teaches me the Song of Time. First, I do a little bit of the Happy Mask side quest, and then I go to the Temple of Time, place the 3 spiritual stones in the pedestal, and play the Song of Time. This opens the door of time, revealing the second game to ever have the Master Sword. So with one great effort, I pull the Master Sword out of its pedestal. In doing this, I open the door of time for Ganondorf to enter the Sacred Realm and access the Triforce. So ironically, I caused the very thing I wanted to prevent. Yay me! Link wakes up in this fancy place called the Chamber of Sages, staring directly at a sage named Rauru. the Sage of Light. Then Link looks at himself and realizes he's an adult now, since apparently the Master Sword sealed him away for 7 years because he wasn't ready to wield it. Yep, welcome to adulthood, Link. Time to pay your taxes. Rauru explains that I'm the hero of time and there are 6 sages total, and in order to defeat Ganon and seal him away, I need to collect 6 medallions, one of them being from Rauru. So once I make it back to the Temple of Time, I meet this random Sheikah? Apparently this Sheikah's name is Sheik. Very creative name. She happens to tell me where the 5 sages are, one being in the Forest Temple, one being in the Fire Temple, one being in the Water Temple, one being in the Shadow Temple, and one being in the Spirit Temple. And the game certainly prompts you to go in a certain order. Forest, Fire, Water, Shadow, Spirit. But funny enough, that's not a required order. You can actually do them in whatever order you want. Now, caveat, and I'm going to use Microsoft Paint to make this point. Let's say you have the Forest Temple, the Fire Temple, the Water Temple, the Shadow Temple, and the Spirit Temple. Now, as long as you get the Fairy Bow, you can actually do the Forest, the Fire, and the Water Temple in any order you want. Now, technically, you could do all of them in any order you want, but that would require glitches, and I'm not getting into that. You do have to do the Shadow Temple next, because in it, you get the hover boots, which are required to access the Spirit Temple. By the way, thank God I bought that metal shield when I was a kid, because otherwise I would not have a shield right now. Let's pull in It's a Wonderful Life and see how the world turned out to be in the past 7 years. Oh my god. So Hyrule Castle was replaced by this massive towering castle called Ganon's Castle, but the rest of the world, for the most part, is relatively unchanged. And if it did change, it wasn't nearly as drastic as Hyrule Castle, or Hyrule Castle Town. So the next thing on our to-do list is actually to head to Lon Lon Ranch. Here we meet Ingo, where we get the chance to ride one of the horses for 10 rupees. And one of these horses just so happens to be Epona. And since Link learned Epona's song, he's easily able to call Epona over. Ingo sees this and he challenges me to a race, which I say yes, and then I win. He's pissed, so he asks for a rematch, and then I beat him again. It turns out he was raising Epona as a gift for Ganondorf, but because I won the races, the horse is now mine, but I can't leave the ranch. Gee, imagine if there were short fences here, and I could just jump over them. Instead, I'm totally soft-locked. What a pity. Real quick, I head back to Kakariko Village to learn the Song of Storms, which is extremely important for later on. Then I also find the old caretaker of the graveyard is dead now. This is Dompe, and if you race him, you can win the hookshot. Do it again and beat him in under a minute, you can win a piece of heart. The first dungeon I decide to tackle is the Ice Cavern, since it's relatively short and I didn't immediately want to go to the Forest Temple. So I went to Zora's Domain only to find it completely froze over. How do you unfreeze it? Well, that's the funny part. You don't. Now, maybe you were supposed to unfreeze the Zora Domain, and it could just be an issue with cut content, but in the final version of the game, it's tied to the Water Temple. So once you beat the Water Temple, the Zora Domain still is frozen and only unfreezes in the credits. So really the only reason you have to go to the Ice Cavern is for the Iron Boots. And at the spot where you get the Iron Boots, you learn the song that warps you to the Water Temple. Oh, you can also get Blue Fire, which unfreezes the king and the door to the shop, so that's fun. As a reward for unfreezing the Zora King, you earn a blue tunic which somehow lets you breathe underwater. Now that I have everything I need for at least some of the Water Temple, off we go to start it. Surprisingly, or not so surprisingly, however you want to view this, Link finds Princess Ruto inside the Water Temple, where she refers to herself as his fiancé. Then she makes a request asking Link to kill a monster in the temple. And then off she floats to never be seen again until the end of the temple. After doing a few puzzles, this is where I decided to shift gears and focus on Kukiri Forest. Now, when you first get here, it's infested with all sorts of monsters, but fortunately, unlike Zora's Domain, you can actually restore it to how it was 7 years ago. I head through the Lost Woods and run into Mido of all people. Turns out he doesn't recognize me, so I play Saria's song to tell him that I'm actually friends with Saria, and so that he can let me past. When I made it to the opening of the Forest Temple, Sheik teaches me the minute of Forest, just in case I ever need to warp back here. Which is another thing about this game. I mean, I get it, more songs are kinda cool, but why have 6 different warp songs instead of one warp song to 6 different places? That just really never made much sense to me. So to enter the temple, you have to use the hook shot that you just won from your race with Dampe, and honestly, the concept for this temple is actually really cool. In practice, it's a little annoying, but otherwise, it's pretty cool. This is the main room which the whole temple revolves around. And there are 4 torches in this main room. Each were lit by a certain Poe, but they all left for some reason. And you have to go around the temple, killing all these Poes, and returning them to their torch thing. Once you relight all 4 torches, there's an elevator that actually brings you down to the basement bottom, wherever this is called, and it brings you to the boss fight. And that boss fight is... No, that's not the real Ganondorf, it's a Phantom Ganondorf. Oh, this is a great time to mention that the shooting in this game is fundamentally broken, and here's me talking about it in Ocarina of Time Part 15. You really have to understand that with shooting in this game, and same with Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask doesn't get off the hook because it's better than Ocarina of Time. It still has the same god-awful shooting. And you can either flick the stick just a teeny tiny hair, or, and it doesn't move. It moves a teeny tiny bit like that, or it ends up going 5 miles. Who designed this? The answer? God, I should have known. It's always this guy. So then in Ocarina of Time Part 9, I actually killed Phantom Ganon first try. Very surprisingly. Here are some highlights. Then he gets sealed in the gap between dimensions, and we get the Forest Medallion from Saria. Then a great Deku Tree baby who looks like he's smoking a leaf spawns in. Then I learn the Prelude of Light from Sheik to warp back to the Temple of Time. Then I teach the guy I learned the Song of Storms from the Song of Storms. Yes, I know, it's a paradox. Then I do part of Bottom of the Well and get the Lens of Truth. And dear God, why the hell is Dead Hand so bloody? How is this an E-rated game? Then I went back to being an adult to complete a little bit more of the Water Temple. This is where we run into Dark Link, the worst boss in the entire game! Here's a montage as to how garbage this boss fight is.
20 minutes later.
Can I please just target you for the love of God? Nope, I'm using the magic again. Screw this. Oh my God, okay. That was a bit of a shock. Oh my God. How did he show up that fast? What the hell? Let's start with the fire. How did that not hurt you? Oh wow, is that the strategy now? Wow, I think I found the strategy. Oh my God, these controls are so bad. But between attempts on Dark Link's life, I was doing a couple other things, such as getting the Goron tunic from Link the Goron, who happens to be Darunia's son. He tells me that I need to go and save the Gorons. This is because Ganondorf is making an example out of the Gorons because they resisted him, and so he's gonna feed them to an ancient dragon named Volvagia. Sheik teaches me the Bolero of Fire, and I go and free all 11 Gorons. I also get the Megaton Hammer, and I successfully kill Volvagia, which gets me the Fire Medallion from Darunia. Oh, for the record, the Forest Medallion was from Saria. The very next thing I did was I finally killed Dark Link. Here was my reaction. Oh my God. Oh my God. Are my eyes deceiving me, or did I just kill Dark Link? All of that got me the long shot, which is basically just an upgraded hook shot. At this point, I was able to complete the rest of the Water Temple, including killing the boss, Morpha, who can be, relatively speaking, annoying. This cancerous-looking ball thing will generate a bunch of, like, water arms or something, I don't know. And you have to grab that cancerous ball thing with your long shot, and then beat the hell out of it with your sword. Yay! Princess Ruto gave me the Water Medallion! 4 down, 2 to go. Don't worry, I made sure to get the fire arrows. Next thing on the to-do list is to head to Kakariko Village, and oh my God, it looks like there was a riot here. I mean, you've got buildings on fire, you've got Sheik standing by the well as it explodes, I get knocked out by an invisible spirit, and Sheik teaches me the Nocturne of Shadow, which takes me to the Shadow Temple, which just so happens to be behind the graveyard. And this, kids, is why you need Din's Fire, because without it, you can't enter the Shadow Temple, which happen to be where the hover boots are, and in order to get the hover boots, you have to have round 2 with... Again, how the hell is this an E-rated game? At least I got the hover boots. So after much puzzle solving in this, I killed Bongo Bongo, which is a fun boss fight, but Again, how is this E-rated? As it turns out, Impa is the Sage of Shadow, and she gives me the Shadow Medallion. So the Spirit Temple happens to be located in the Gerudo region. I talked to this construction worker over here, who says his employees were imprisoned by a bunch of extremely sexist women, so I go and free this carpenter's employees. After I free the last one, I gain the respect of one of the Gerudo leaders, who gives me a Gerudo token so that I can actually be here and not get imprisoned. Yes, they will imprison you because you're a man. So the Gerudo kindly opened the gate for me to go out into the desert to get to the Spirit Temple. And through the desert, you have to follow this one Poe, otherwise you'll get lost and you'll have to start all over again. But once I made it through the desert, I'm here. This is the Spirit Temple. I go inside, realize I can't do anything, I leave, then Sheik teaches me the Requiem of Spirit. Oh, by the way, since I was here, I just grabbed Lineru's love. If you didn't know, the Spirit Temple is actually very unique, because you complete half of it when you're a child and the other half when you're an adult. And since you're required to play as a child for the first half, back in time I go. So when I get to the Spirit Temple, I run into this woman named Naburu. She's a thief desiring the treasure that's inside the temple. And in order to get in the temple, I agreed to give Naburu the treasure inside. Good thing she doesn't know there are two treasures. The first treasure being the silver gauntlets, which allow you to move more heavy things. But before I can give them to her, she gets kidnapped by two witches. Back to the future I go! When I get back, I find that these two witches have an iron knuckle by their side, and they unleash it on me, and I defeat it, and I realize that's Naburu! And because I defeated her, that undid the brainwashing that the witches did, so they recaptured her. Oh, by the way, yes, I did get the second treasure of this temple, the Mirror Shield, which I used to kill these two witches and Twin Rova.
Shoot! What a fresh kid, this one! We'll get serious this time. What? Hey, Kuma, what's that above your head? I don't know, but you have one too over your head, Kotake. And I'm only 400 years old, and I'm just 380. We're twins! Don't try to lie about your age! You must have gone senile! What are you calling senile? We're twins, how can you feel older? I'll come back to haunt you!
Yay, I got the Spirit Medallion!
But if only I knew you would become such a handsome man. I should have kept the promise I made back then.
I'm sorry, what? Rauru then tells me to go to the Temple of Time, and that is exactly what I'm doing. So Sheik reveals that the Triforce of Power went to Ganondorf, the Triforce of Courage went to me of all people, and the Triforce of Wisdom went to the 7th Sage. Wait, there's a 7th Sage? And that sage is Princess Zelda. That's right, Sheik was an alias. Princess Zelda gives me the light arrows, and just in time, because immediately after, she gets kidnapped by Ganondorf. Meaning, if I want to free her, I have to go to Ganon's castle. Now, there are barriers preventing me from confronting Ganondorf. 6 to be exact, and these are each puzzles based on the thing each sage represents, except forest, which is wind puzzles, and water, which is ice puzzles, partly due to cut content, I think. So at long last, I cleared the barriers and on my way up to Ganondorf. So Ganondorf obviously wants all 3 pieces of the Triforce back, and not just the one he got stuck with. So he casts like some evil curse throughout the entire room that keeps me from being able to target him, which is really annoying. And then for the first phase, yes, there are multiple phases of this boss fight, we're playing tennis. So finally, after enough volleys of tennis, I genuinely don't know why Nintendo picked that as how to fight Ganondorf, but they did. Princess Zelda is released, and with Ganondorf's last breath, he's gonna bring down the tower and try to kill us. So we have to escape in 3 minutes or we die. But once I escape, the castle turns into rubble. I go over and inspect the rubble and find out that Ganondorf really is alive after all. And he turns into Ganon to look like a pig thing. Great. Thankfully, I can target him now, so it's going to be a hell of a lot easier. Oh, but for the first phase of this, and yes, even this phase is split up into 2 phases. This first phase, I don't have the Master Sword because Ganon knocked it out of my hand. The second one, I'm able to retrieve it. And after enough animal abuse, I get the opportunity to stab him in the head, giving Zelda and the other sages a chance to seal him away into the Sacred Realm. Zelda feels bad that she took 7 years of my life away because I was sealed in the Chamber of Sages for that long. And she does something incredibly dumb in this very emotional point in her life. She sends me back to my time. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that dumb exactly? Simple answer. This timeline. Simple answer. It creates 2 parallel timelines for some reason. And this timeline, now without Link, still exists where they remember him as a hero, that Ganondorf eventually comes back in and causes Hyrule to be flooded, leading up to the events of the Wind Waker, my favorite Zelda. The other timeline is where Link warns Zelda what will happen, so that none of the events of Ocarina of Time ever do happen. And this causes Link to grow depressed, as no one recognizes him as a hero. But who cares about mental health? Let's just send Link back anyway. Once the gateway through time closes, closes, Navi leaves Link. One of the potential theories explaining this is that Navi died and she couldn't bear Link watching her die, so she went off and died alone. And then Link warns Zelda to make sure this plot never happens. Now, the question at the beginning was, is it really the best Zelda ever made? My answer after this is no, and the reason is because despite the fact that the plot is pretty good, not perfect, but pretty good, you do have some major problems with the game, such as the movement, you've got shooting, etc. At least the moving and shooting issues were fixed in the 3DS remake, which is good, but the remake doesn't fix the core problems with the game. Those being, one, it's an extremely empty world, despite how big it was pretty big for the time, because the first 3D open world Zelda game, for what it is, it's a pretty big game. It's just so empty, and there's almost zero reason to ever go back to it once you've completed the game. Now, yes, there are a few side quests here and there, but most of them are ones that you just do through the game already. But then some of them are just absolutely insufferable. Like, once you get Epona from Lon Lon Ranch, you can go back and race her again. And if you make 2 laps under 50 seconds, you can get a cow in your house. I mean, okay, but why? Why would I waste my life doing that? And so I think that's the core issue Ocarina of Time faces. But even with that issue, it is still a very good game. It's just not a good game to play after you beat it. It's a great game to go from start to finish, but it's not a great game to go from finish to what do you do then? Those are my thoughts on Ocarina of Time. I think it's very easy to look at it through rose-tinted glasses, because if you grew up with the game, then obviously you're going to view it more favorably than if you didn't. And in fairness, I kind of grew up with the game. But let's just remember that rose-tinted glasses don't fix everything. Anyway, I want to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked that video. If you did, go ahead and follow the channel. And I'm going to do a special ending thing here. Thank you so much for watching, and have a Merry Christmas.